Here we are again in Matthew chapter 26. In Matthew chapter 26, we're going to go down and we're going to touch on the 14th verse. And down at the 14th verse, Matthew chapter 26, we find here Judas now leaving the dinner, and he went out to meet the scribes and the Pharisees and out to betray Jesus. And he made an agreement with them that he's going to turn him over for 30 pieces of silver. He's going to betray him for 30 pieces of silver. And he's going to, tell them what day is good and what time is good for them to come and arrest him. We're also going to look at how this is similar to what happened to Joseph when Joseph was sold by his brethren, his brothers, for 20 pieces of silver. So Joseph was like a type of Christ. Joseph was also sold into slavery, and Jesus was also sold by his brethren. And Joseph also was sold by his brethren. But we're going to look at that in a bit. So before we get to that, we see here in the chapter, because this is a long chapter. This chapter is very long, one of the longest, I believe, in this book. And after that, we find that Jesus now, seeing that his time has come, that he's going to die, and he's going to give himself up as a sacrifice for his people. He went and he told his disciples that they should go to such and such a house. And when they go to such a house, tell the person who owns the house that he's coming there to have the supper. I guess before Jesus had told the person that I'm going to use your space, or I'm going to use your space, so at certain time I'm going to send my disciples to you and to prepare the place. So he told his disciples, go to such and such a place and you're going to see such and such a person, and tell them that the master need the place that I guess they spoke about before. So that then, and Jesus now went there and he's with his disciples, and while he was there with his disciples, he began to take off his outer garment and he wrapped it around himself, and he took some water in a basin and he began to wash their feet. And we find here that when Peter saw that Jesus was coming around to wash his feet, he said, no, you're not going to wash my feet. And Jesus told Peter that if I don't wash your feet, you have no part in me. And there Peter said, don't wash my feet only, but my hands and my face, and so on. And Jesus said, person who's clean don't need to take a bath. You are clean. So he does wash his feet, and after he washes their feet, he broke bread and he gave it to his disciples. And he said, this is my body which is broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me. And he took the cup, and the cup in the same manner, he drank of the cup and he gave it to his brethren. So this is the cup of the New Testament in my blood. And often as you do this in remembrance of me. And he told, when he get round to Judas, and later on he said, when he was sitting there in the supper, it's not like how we have supper in the church, or we have communion in the church where we just get a piece of biscuit and we break it, and what we do, we get a little grapefruit juice and we drink it and we say that's the Lord's Supper. The Lord's Supper was actually, they was having a feast, they was having a dinner, they was having a supper, if you want to call it. It's not just a piece of biscuit. They was eating. And Paul later on said to the saints in the church that some of you around here, when they're having a Lord's Supper, they're kind of like mimicking what the Lord did. There were some people couldn't wait for the rest of the saints to come. They was eating and drinking and getting themselves drunk and all this sort of this things that they were doing. And Paul said, you guys are disrespecting the Lord's body. You're disrespecting the old thing here and the whole idea of the Lord's Supper. That we are to come together as a group and we are to celebrate or remember what the Lord have done for them in this, and not to go and eat. And some have food to eat and some don't have no food to eat. When some come to have a communion, there's no food left, and a whole bunch of different things was going on there. But that's another subject for another time. So going down from there, we find that Jesus now took this disciples into the garden of the Gethsemane, where he was there praying. And when he was there praying, the disciples fell asleep. We know the story. They fell asleep, and he asked them, can you guys not watch with me for an hour? And he took 3 of them and he went to a certain spot, and then he prayed and he said, Father, if it's possible, take this cup from me, Nevertheless, it's not my will, but it's your will. Let your will be done. And later on, you find Judas came with a group of people, the mob that he came with, and they arrest Jesus, and they took Jesus to Caiaphas' house, and there they to the judgment hall, and they judge him. They have him there all night, and they're questioning him and all sorts of different things, and they slapped him in the face and they beat him up, and then we find there Peter at the end. One of the maid that was there recognized Peter and said, yes, you are with him, you are one of his disciples. And Peter said no, and they went back again, and another one said, yes, we saw you. And then Peter said no, and then at the third time they said, yes, you are definitely one of them, because your language betray you. You speak like a Galilean. And he started to curse and say, this, I don't know this man. And as soon as he began to curse and say, I don't know this man, the rooster crow. And then Jesus turned and looked at Peter, and Peter remembered what Jesus said to him, and his heart was broken, and he get up from there. He started weeping and running and crying, and he fled from there because he remembered what Jesus had told him at first, that before the cock crow 3 times you will deny me once. You deny me 3 times. Before the cock crow once, you would not deny me 3 times. So Peter get up from there and he ran away, and he wept, and he was saddened by what had happened and what he did, because he remember what he told Jesus, said that even though all these people deny you, I will never deny you. I'm not going to leave you. And not just Peter said that, but all the disciples said the same thing, that we would not leave you. And as the mob came for Jesus in the garden, all of them forsook him. And remember, Jesus said, all men forsook me, but the Lord, his Father is with him. And when they all forsook him. So that's what happened in chapter 26, just to go over it real quick. Again, it's a long chapter, but we're going to look at how this also relates to Joseph. You see, Joseph was a type of Christ. Joseph was sold into slavery, or into bondage. Joseph was sold, and he was sold by his brethren for what? Joseph was sold by his brethren for 20 pieces of silver, while Jesus was sold by his brethren for what? He was sold for 30 pieces of silver. Joseph was rejected by his brethren, and here we find Jesus was also rejected by his brethren, by his people, and he was sold. He was given over to the Gentiles. He was given over to the Gentile, the Roman rulers at that time. Likewise, Joseph was sold and given over to the Ishmaelites, who sold him to Caiaphas, the Egyptian. Here we find also that Joseph was wrongfully accused. And remember, Jesus, when he was there with the Sanhedrin and all the religious people, they accused him, and you have so many false witnesses came up there and accused him wrongfully, and they thought that they created all these different accusations against him, and which was not true. And here we find Jesus was also Joseph was wrongfully accused. He was accused of trying to rape Potiphar's wife, and he was thrown into prison. And here we find Jesus was thrown, or he wasn't thrown into prison, because the prison that his punishment was death. And he was put to death because they said, yes, he claimed that he is the Messiah, the Son of God. And these people sent him to be crucified because of what was said. And here we find Joseph again. He was now taken from prison, and he was exalted. He was exalted unto the throne, which was the prime minister of Egypt. He was the only person who was under the Pharaoh. That was Joseph, who was next in line, or not next in line, but who was the second ruler in Egypt. And you will find Jesus, when he rose from the dead, he was also exalted on high, and he went and he gave gifts unto men. And he was exalted as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So if you find Joseph was exalted, and he was taken out of prison. He was taken out of a grave actually, because if it wasn't for God who intervened in his Joseph's life, Joseph would have been dead in the prison. But God intervened, and it was like a grave for Joseph, and Joseph was raised from the dead and was exalted. Jesus was also raised from the dead and was also exalted. And here he was exalted on high, and he gave gift unto man. Joseph was exalted, and he also was there, and he was also able to save his brethren because of his exalt. And he also gave gift. If you look at it, the scripture, he gave gift unto his brethren. His brethren was given gift to bring this gift back to your house and bring it back to my father, and let him see that it is me, Joseph. It was my hand who gave these gifts to you. And here's your money. I give your money back to you. So Joseph, when he was elevated out of prison, he gave gifts unto his brethren, and his brethren went back to their father's house and said, our brother Joseph is alive, and he's the ruler in Egypt. And remember that story, how that story went. So Jesus went, and I was resurrected from the grave, and he went into heaven, and he gave gifts unto his brethren. And lastly, Joseph saved his brothers and his brethren by taking them to be where he is, so he can protect them, so he can cover them, so he can they can be okay, sheltered, and have enough food to eat. So Jesus now he extended an eye, gave gift unto man, and now he's coming back, and he's going to take his brethren where he is, and he's where he is, they're going to be there also, and they're going to be protected, and they're going to be under his shadow, under his wings, and they're going to be okay, if you want to put it that way. So he's a type of Joseph. Our Joseph's a type of Christ, and you find there's a lot of types in the Bible, and this is definitely one of them, that Joseph was a type of Christ. And we're going to move on to chapter 27 next time. I determined I'm going to finish this. It's been a couple months since I've been going over this book, and I'm determined I'm going to finish it. And God bless you until we get to the next chapter.